comment period pursuant to the Tennessee Open Meetings Act. Is there anyone here who would like to make comments for the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the approval of the minutes from the October 28th meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next item on the agenda is the Willis insurance contract. Mr. York, can you give us a report on that, please?
Good morning. Thank you, Dawson. Excuse me, weather got me. As you know, we are not an official part of Metro government, nor are we part of the state government. We are an independent body, and therefore we're not self-insured, and thus we have to carry our own insurances. The next several slides will be a summation of the insurances that we have covered. We did work through a cooperative program contract that was procured through the CCA, the Convention Center Authority, to work with the Willis Towers and Watson company. They broker insurances for the Convention Center and various other entities. We sought these four insurances. These are our premiums. These are kind of our coverage slides over the next couple. I'll roll through them independently. I won't read them to you. If there are any questions, a member of Willis is here to answer any detailed questions that you may have. These do allow us to have all of the necessary coverages for
construction contract with Kearney. They have officially, excuse me, got the bin cold weather cough. They've officially kicked off construction, which is wonderful. So both of those items are in motion, we're really happy to see that happening. It's work that has already been brought before you. You can kind of get a sense of the limited area here on Interstate Drive. It's between Woodland and Shelby, and it's a continuation of the MES duct bank, the ITS shared duct bank, from what the Titans were doing and then on to Shelby. like I said, that work is kicked off, which is wonderful. This MOU specifically is to lay out the roles and responsibilities essentially between the EBDA and NES. And for Interstate Drive, really, we're splitting up the work essentially with NES. I will say they've been a great partner so far to work with, which is really wonderful. Great working relationship. They are actually installing all of the equipment, the transformers. They're participating all along the way in the designs. We're working really well together as a team. Our role is to procure the construction, basically install the trench, do the duct bank, the conduits, and then they're going to lay all of the infrastructure. So it's a good split of the work, and like I said, we're working really well together on that. This just kind of gives you an idea of what this MOU is specifically. Then on the other piece, thank you. Do you have any questions on the Interstate Drive MOU?
Seeing no questions on that, we can go ahead and entertain a motion for the Interstate Drive MOU.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Thank you, Ms. Gopal. Next, the Sylvan Street MOU.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm a get her done kind of person, so jumping right into the next one. Thank you. So the work on Sylvan Street and Shelby, you've also seen this work previously before. You've actually been able to, you've approved the design work again with Kimley Horn. It's the same piece we were able to do, and we're currently in the designs for Shelby Avenue from Interstate Drive to South 2nd. And there's also a relocation of overhead lines. It's a temporary relocation of overhead lines down Sylvan to support the upcoming work on Parcel G, which is Elmington. You all heard about that last board meeting in more detail from the Fallon group and the Elmington group. So it's to support those pieces there. We do not have a construction contract out yet. Some of the things we've heard, Member Carter, you've mentioned in the past, wondering about bidding work out. We're right there with you. We want to start bidding things out and having some more competitive bid and, so to speak, share the love. There's a lot of work to go around in this city and in the East Bank, and we're hopeful to be able to open that up more. So that's our goal for that piece, which is why we don't have a construction contract yet. For that, it is again NES duct bank, shared ITS duct bank. Very similar. You can kind of get a sense of where exactly that is. The orange line here details the running down Shelby is the permanent duct bank and shared ITS duct bank, and then it will go to South 2nd and pause there and hit a riser, and from that point it will go above ground and have overhead lines going down Sylvan. It's temporary. You all know that we want to do all of the underground work, all of the NES work underground, but this is a temporary piece to feed so that Elmington can get going. So we're on that time crunch for that. Like I said, we're working really well with NES, working really well with our partners, and finalizing the designs now for a bit of that. The MOU also lays out the roles and responsibilities very similarly to Interstate Drive. We hope to replicate this really as much as we can, where we can share the roles and responsibilities with NES. Again, we will be in charge of the designs, construction, schedule, all of that, working together, making sure it's meeting all of the NES specs, and install the duct bank conduits, and they will pull all of the electrical. And the plan for that, it lays out, again, similar MOU.
Yeah, follow-up, you pretty much answered this here, but I was going to note, I know for the Interstate Drive, due to the time and the fact that, the Titans construction was already going on, we didn't bid that out due to the exigency of that being already open under the ground. It sounds like for this one, there will be an active bid, and is that bid already ongoing, or are you taking proposals, or where are we on that process?
This is a great question, thank you. We have not put that out yet. There's a couple of different things that we're looking at, and I'm sure Ben and Anna can get into this more as time goes on. Obviously, we're a newer agency, so we're creating a procurement process so that we can have our own procurement. That's obviously not something we can do very quickly, so we're doing two things at once right now. One is preparing to set that up so that we can go through that procurement process in the future and have big open bids like what we want. Right now, what we're looking at is utilizing existing contracts and still having the competitive bid process, which is really what we're looking for. So that's the plan for this next piece on Shelby, just because of the timing of it. It's going to take some time to think through the procurement process, of course.
And a quick follow-up, I know we heard at last meeting about the Elmington, that building and a hopeful, shovels in the ground date. I assume that the whole bidding process, we expect we're still on track for the shovels in the ground date that we heard about last time, even with this relocation.
That's right, and that's partly why we are not waiting to get through the procurement process to do this work. It's because we have to have those overhead lines relocated in time for their work to begin. So, again, this is we're going to work very diligently, but we definitely would like to have some competitive pricing.
Any other questions? All right. Is there a motion for this MOU? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Next matter on the agenda is the informational presentation on the TPAC agreement. Mr. York.
Good morning again. So, as you all know and have read in the newspaper, the Metro and the TPAC Corporation have signed a deal to bring and relocate the TPAC to our area of influence. And so we, as the East Bank team, have been working diligently hand in hand with our Metro partners. I am going to ask Masami Tyson, who is the Chief of Staff for Mayor Freddie O'Connell, to join as well. And we'll have a brief conversation about this. I will preface this by saying we did have independent counsel look at the deal structure and what it means for the East Bank team. I think at the next board meeting we will have a full discussion on that after the deal is officially approved by TPAC's board and Metro Council, and we can relay what the findings of that are and how it impacts our work and our ability to perform and move forward. Just in generalities, as the location of the site has not changed, we've talked about this for numerous times. The overall conceptual site plan that is within the deal is for a 370,000 square foot performing arts facility that does house their office space. It does have performance halls within it to facilitate their ability to do their job and their business. This is a rendering that was in the deal structure as well, just along with some bullet points about their TPAC's responsibility. The next slide will roll into what East Bank team's responsibility will be to provide to facilitate their relocation to our area. So a couple of the things, one being the first in the gatekeeping issue is a Piedmont gas relocation. The East Bank team has already started the process of coordinating with the Piedmont team about relocation. As you know, those they can go slower, they can go faster. The Piedmont team has been great thus far. They're willing to throw some additional staffing at it to facilitate the movement of that. That allows us to be the thing keeping TPAC from starting, because right now there's a line that bisects the site and really keeps them from being able to start. There is also some reconstruction of Victory Avenue that is a share between us and the TPAC team. That will be a coordinated effort that our team will work hand in hand with their team. There's additional items that are required to fully kind of bake in their plan and allow them to be able to be successful on our side. So with that, I will pause and let Masami have a moment of time.
Thank you, Ben. Good morning, Chair and board members. Thank you so much for this opportunity to address you just briefly. Again, my name is Masami Tyson and I work for the Mayor's Office. Now, we all know that this deal between TPAC and Metro was a deal years in the making. All parties involved ensured that the end result is an optimal home for a vibrant arts and performance center, a significant cultural institution in the heart of downtown in the East Bank. TPAC is going to be the anchor of the East Bank, and it is a significant milestone. This was only possible because leaders of all the entities involved That is those of TPAC, the city, and the state. This authority, this community, and various stakeholders work together to make this happen in the best way possible. Now, it was a thorough negotiation, and while TPAC and Metro are the ones that are the named parties in the agreement, each relevant party, not the least of which is this authority, said its piece. There were countless meetings and more meetings and more meetings and conversations that went into all of this. It was all hands on deck. Now, all of this meant that we engaged in deal-making at its finest. After all, this project and deal would set the standard for many projects and deals that will follow, and we made sure that it would fit into this puzzle, and we all know how complicated that puzzle is going to be for the East Bank, including the infrastructure needs, as well as roads and access, what this community wanted, transit opportunities, as well as future projects to the extent that we could envision them at this juncture. And that will hold everything together in the future picture of East Bank. In other words, it was impossible to do without everyone's input. And so on behalf of Metro, on behalf of the mayor's office, I would like to thank this board and all parties involved for the collaboration and hard work that went into making and realization of this deal. We are excited about this board and other stakeholders learning more about this project today and in future opportunities, and embracing this milestone in the months and years to come. Thank you.
So a couple of other pieces of information, just procedurally. There is what is required by Metro Code, a Section 230 meeting. It's a public meeting to discuss the dissemination of public land within Davidson County that's required. That is occurring on the 4th, and then it will be read on the 4th as well as an agenda item, and then we'll subsequently have 3 readings through Metro Council. And so that's the procedural side on that. And we anticipate that to be completed in early January.
Ben, do you have the specific info on the Section 230, like where it is and when it is?
Yes, sir. It's at 2 p.m. On December 4th, this Thursday, and I believe it is at TPAC. I think it's in the Black Box Theater.
It is. One other piece of just kind of flagging it for everybody, all of the deal documents have renderings and sketches and graphics that include various iterations of public infrastructure that have been encountered over the last 12, 18, 24, 48 months. And some of those renderings include various iterations of roadways for Victory or Waterside or East Bank Boulevard or 2nd. Some of those are continuing to be valid, and some of those are still in the what I would call the putty phase. One of such is the East Bank Boulevard conversation. At this time, we, the East Bank team, have been working diligently with our partners at Metro through the time, NDOT, WeGo, and planning to discuss what that future looks like for that corridor and what the needs are for this entity and for this neighborhood. We have worked diligently to provide all the data necessary and all of the information to that team. We're working through a factually based approach to decision making with that team to ensure that what is built optimally fits the network that is being built in the CHIME program. And so we don't have an official date when a decision will be made. We don't have an official kind of start and launching. We have essentially put our AECOM contractor on pause, waiting on the decision to be kind of ratified through the group. And so when that is kind of made, we will definitely message it to you guys, and then there will be a conversation that has to occur with the community to make sure that we're being good stewards of that. So that's the brief update on that.
Are there any questions?
First, I just want to thank the mayor's office and the mayor's staff and Ben and TPAC for getting this over the finish line. I think it will be, it will allow Nashville and the state of Tennessee to become a vibrant performing arts location. to compete with other big cities if that's the direction that we want to go. So I think it's very beneficial long-term to our state and to Nashville as well. Also want to thank Fallon, too, because I think they had to concede some things in the contract to allow this to get through the finish line based on some things. So I appreciate Fallon being a partner in this as well. My only question is not on the deal, but those dates 2030 to 2032 are very important. And so my question is as we're going through this process and knowing that 2030 to 2032 with Bridgestone coming into a new design, with the stadium coming into a new design, with other things potentially looking to come to Tennessee that we've never considered before, are we confident, or is there a way to speed up the process potentially to try to meet those deadlines and get things finished by 2030 or 2031 and not have it get delayed?
Yeah, I think that's what our whole goal is expediting those time periods. One of which is the procurement period. It is laborious. It is thoughtfully laborious. I mean, it's intentionally that way. And so we're thinking through how we do procurement in a way that is efficient and in our own stead. We're also looking at opportunities the funding piece is also one that we're looking through as well. We're working with our partners at Metro Finance daily on what funding looks like and how we achieved various funding mechanisms to allow us to go. And then our HDR partners are always running the Gantt chart and looking at various ways to tinker with the schedule to move things in simultaneous fashions, or whether they have to truly be nose to tail on them. So we're looking at ways to expedite and be efficient as we can.
Yeah, thank you, Cameron. I was thinking the exact same thing, but more from a question of phasing as everything comes online and more of these deals start getting done, because we don't really know the timing. Maybe this block goes instead of this block. So what is the plan for consideration of a reallocation of phasing, or thinking about what we need to push forward? Are you guys thinking about that?
Yeah, we meet continuously to talk about iterative steps and what is critical path and what can have a little float in the schedule. And so we do that on a daily, hourly basis. And when a news breaks of a rezoning at, say, the scrapyard, that changed our path drastically, because we had kind of looked at that as a future phase. We have started to expedite a lot of the considerations for how we get core goods and core services to that facility and to that area. Also what the mobility infrastructure looks like in that footprint, as well as tying into the network. And so it's all kind of a juggling piece. We do have a large development in the middle at the Station East development that's kind of sitting dormant, waiting. And so when they start, that will be another paradigm shift where we will go back to look at, okay, schedule-wise, how do we need to tinker with things to ensure that we're not on top of each other, or that we're not, putting a water line in that has to come right back out, things of that nature.
I've got a few questions. I think I'd heard that in terms of, I guess, overarching question is, what will this body need to approve in relation to this? I believe there's a modification perhaps to the Fallon agreement or some agreement that we'll have to approve. Can you walk us through both what will actually be an action item for this board and when we expect that to be an action item?
So I don't think there's an action item for the Fallon contract. I think there's an action item for the IGA that will have to occur between us and Metro to assume responsibility for the TPAC deal, and assume Metro's responsibilities and roles in some capacities. And so we'll have to go through an IGA amendment to add that contract as one that is under our purview.
And is that because the IGA, as initially written, given the TPAC deal wasn't done, did not include that as something we were taking on? Is that essentially what the amendment would?
Correct. It would just be additive, not any other modification. So.
Got it. And what timeline do we expect for that? I mean, assuming, I know these other bodies have to make approval first.
Assuming approvals by other bodies, it would probably be in the middle of quarter one to the end of quarter one of next year, just to make sure that we're assuming those responsibilities. Now, that's not to say we're not going to do those responsibilities between now and then, because, like I said, the Piedmont gas relocation is absolute critical path item and is gatekeeping TPAC's ability to put shovels in the ground. And so, you can't put a shovel on top of a gas main. So we're critically trying to look at that as one of those things that has to go immediately.
And then I'm curious in terms of the pedestrian bridge part of this, from our sort of placemaking perspective, if any meaningful changes that are contemplated to, we've always seen it as coming across, landing at more or less the stadium and having a loop, which may be what we're calling the Greenway Connector. Is all of that still expected, or is there any larger design modification that's sort of built into the deal making that led to this?
Yeah, no, it is still anticipated. The question is timing and when. There's a larger coordination piece that has to occur. There are now, let's call it 5 entities that have a stake in this conversation, one being Metro, one being us. The other 3 are the Titans, who are a major consideration on how people arrive to and from this event, this space, and the new space. Also Fallon, who will be developing the areas around it, and so they are also a member of that, and then the TPAC company. And so those 5 entities need to, now that the deal's done, and as it moves to completion, and its approvals by all parties, those 5 teams need to really kind of coalesce in one room and have a serious conversation about timing and, how painful is painful, and when can we get this done in an expedited manner, and how do we make sure that it's safe and efficient for people on event days and on Monday through Fridays, and how do you continue to utilize that space, or is there a full closure, or what the conversation is between the parties, and what the detours, what the reroutes, what the accommodations are in that space. And so there's a lot of dominoes in there, and there's a lot of ways to do it. We're trying to get in a space where the 5 of us get in a room and say, okay, what are critical guardrails for each of the parties, and how do we overcome and find the silver bullet that makes everybody okay?
Got it. And so then one of my follow-ups may have sort of just been answered in that it's TBD, but I know in the original MOU there was pretty strong language about never having a closure of the pedestrian bridge. I didn't see that in the agreement documents exactly. So is it, maybe we don't yet know because these 5 entities have to figure that out, but it looks like at the very least it's no longer prescriptively that there won't be a closure.
Yeah.
It's sort of TBD whether or not there will be.
Yeah, the parties need to get in a room and decide. We are trying to look out for making the closure or modification, the what I call the pain point, small as possible in duration, and figuring out how to do that in a most efficient way. We do realize that this is a heavy route for commuters. It's a heavy route for events. It's a heavy route for office tenants and users on a daily basis. And so we want to ensure that those routes are still thoughtfully engaged, but we've got to figure out a way to also construct it, and because it's not going to get built off site and drop in from the sky. So we have to figure out a way to do that in a thoughtful way.
Right.
Just want to echo what Ben said, but I think, in answering all your questions, I think all the parties are absolutely committed. I think the speaker asked if we were confident. What I can assure you is that we are 100% committed. That is all the parties at the table to make sure that we come up with the best case outcome possible, whether it's the ped bridge or anything else, as well as follow those timelines that are critically important to the city.
Sure. And I ask, this goes out, we get all of our feedback, and I live in the East Bank and had multiple people, sort of those commuters we're talking about, sort of have a panic moment of how am I going to get to work if I can't bike over the bridge the next day for 6 months or whatever. So while I know we won't be voting on that, and I know y'all are very much focused on wanting to keep access open, just to echo sort of the concerns I've heard from people that's, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but a lot of people want it open as much as absolutely possible, for sure. And then I'm curious, I know there's been some cost shifting in sort of getting this deal done, and one thing that is not clear to me in terms of the infrastructure cost that Metro's now taking on somewhat more of, is that infrastructure cost that ultimately would be overseen by this body, or would that piece stay sort of, the mayor's capital spending plan and overseen by Metro? And if I'm not asking that question as specifically as, if you sort of get the idea of it, just is this our purview with the additional cost, or Metro's, or both?
Yeah, I think the heart of your question is we will encumber all of the requirements of this slide. We will encumber those as tasks, jobs, things that make the rest of the East Bank possible to develop as well. At this time, they're currently being funded or have been funded through the CSP request. And so we're working hand in hand with Masami and her team to go through that as well.
And then, sorry to ask so many here, but a follow-up. Again, I haven't had as much time with the documents as I could have, but in terms of at the MOU, it seemed like cost overrun was pretty much focused on TPAC at the time. I guess with this piece on this slide, is cost overruns beyond projected going to fall on Metro at this point for these pieces, or does that stay on TPAC?
So I would caveat that to say neither board has approved it, Metro's council nor TPAC's board. I think we could get into a little bit more of that detail probably in a future meeting, and that's probably something that's most appropriately covered at the Section 230 meeting. And I'm sure that they have a kind of a detailed walkthrough at that touch point. I think some of that is still kind of working through the minutia of that. I believe that that's all been taken care of, though.
Yes, so because we have not yet had the Section 230 meeting, I would ask for your sort of patience in disclosing some of that information, perhaps at the next board meeting, if that is something the board would like a presentation on. I'd also like to introduce now the Metro's finance director and make sure that she did not have comments on that question. Thank you.
Okay, and then maybe my last one on this slide. I don't know, obviously the East Bank Boulevard's involved in all this, but is the East Bank Boulevard as a line item essentially separate from all this deal, or is part
Yes.
of the, okay.
It's completely separate. It is no bearing on TPAC's ability to deliver or open a door or perform in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
Right, and these project costs that Metro is taking on, like that, East Bank's not in that because that's a totally different boulevard. Okay. All right. That's the end of mine.
Any other questions from this end? No. I think you covered them all.
Thank you all.
Okay, so that's it for this presentation. Thank you both for being here and for the information. Next item on the agenda is the presentation on the pilot for affordable housing. Ms. Scratter and Mr. Brewer.
Good morning, Board. Anna Grider with the Development Authority, and I'm joined by Ben Brewer with Elmington, who you heard from at the last board meeting. We wanted to take this time for an informational presentation for you guys on a authority that you have, which is to issue pilots for affordable housing. And so we wanted to do this in a format to where you were able to get familiar and ask questions before there was an action in front of you. So I'm going to kick this off with a brief intro, and then Ben will give a little bit more detail. So PILOT stands for Payment in Lieu of Taxes, pre-negotiated annual payment that's made to the city in lieu of property taxes. So it functions like a property tax abatement. You may be aware that Metro and MDHA have approved dozens of these in the past to execute affordable housing in Nashville. And if there are really technical questions, Matt Loftus is here today. He ran the MDHA pilot program for many years and is now a Metro planning employee. So I may call on him if you have very detailed questions. So This is critical, a pilot is critical for executing affordable housing in Davidson County through THDA's low-income housing tax credit program. And this board, as I mentioned, has the authority to authorize pilots. So currently, this is the informational session. Nothing has been submitted to either Metro or EBDA in terms of an application or a detailed request on terms of the annual payment, the length of the pilot. That's all to be determined when Elmington applies. The pilot will go before both this body and Metro Council for one reading as a resolution at Metro Council. And that will occur after an approval from this body. So I am going to pass this over, just before I do pass it over, just a reminder of what we're talking about. This is G1. This is the first piece of Fallon property that will break ground. It's one of two buildings that are required within the Master Development Agreement to be affordable housing, and it's a key implementation of Imagine East Bank, one of its principles of affordability. So really excited to be at this point, and now I will pass it over to Ben.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. Can I steal that? Yeah, thank you. Great to be back in front of you guys again. We're super excited to continue to move the ball forward on getting to a groundbreaking really as soon as possible. But was asked to just come in and talk a little about the context of payment in lieu of taxes and how important that is to affordable housing development, obviously here in Nashville, but really across the country in every state that we operate in. And I'll get into some more context on that as I go through some slides. So just a few update from last time I was here. Project details, this is still a 323 unit multifamily affordable deal. All of the units will have some affordable requirement to them. These requirements match what was, or mirror what was agreed to in the Master Development Agreement. But you'll have 80 units at 30% of AMI, 136 units at 60% of AMI, 107 units at 80% of AMI. This property will also include a daycare, 8,000 square foot daycare, and 12,000 square feet of retail as well. With the daycare, we're still in conversations with several operators that we would partner with to operate that daycare. This property will agree to a 99-year affordability term, which is really unique and something that is unique on this deal. We are expecting to break ground on or around April 15th. And, you know, a lot of things and approvals can change that, but we are very much interested in moving as fast as we can to get a shovel on the ground. Pilot, sorry, thank you. A pilot, it is key, like incredibly much required in order to get a new low-income housing tax credit deal off the ground, and especially in terms of building long-term housing for Nashville. This property obviously is in the core of Nashville, which makes it, there's not a lot, if any, affordable housing in the core of Nashville. So to do this is a big undertaking that we're all challenged with. The East Bank Flats, it'll have a 99-year affordable housing commitment. But the payment in lieu of taxes is a program that is a financial incentive designed to encourage new affordable multifamily housing. It bridges the gap for affordable housing projects, right? So long-term restricted rents, along with rising interest rates, construction, operating costs, makes a pilot an essential financial tool for affordable housing development. The tax payment amount is based upon financial analysis that takes into consideration required financing covenants that we have to agree to, the operating expenses of the property, and an ongoing capital expenditures that will happen at the property. The other thing that's unique about the state of Tennessee is a pilot in the state of Tennessee is when the real estate is taxed, they look at both the tax credits and the real estate. So it's almost a double taxation. Without the pilot, we have to go through the double taxation, and it really makes it unbelievably punitive. And so with the pilot, we're able to mitigate that risk and not be double taxed. I provided this slide because I thought it was interesting. Nashville's had a pilot program since 2016. These are 31 deals that were developed in the 4% low-income housing tax credit program that have been built that utilized the pilot. Of these 31 deals, 11 of these deals were deals that Elmington has done. That kind of just gives you a perspective of what's happened since this pilot program was enacted. Lastly, the slide, this is kind of interesting because if you look at, it's just the variation as you go state to state. So these are the states in which Elmington has developed deals and where we have experience. So the gray states doesn't mean they don't have a program, we're not as familiar with those programs. But some states have statewide programs, some states leave it up to the municipality. And then each municipality and or states can have a variation of what those pilots look like, those tax abatements in terms of longevity, in terms of structure in which they operate. Just to give context for, as we look at creating a pilot program here, that there are different things are done in different ways across the country. And that is my overview of the pilot program, and I'm happy to answer any questions related to that.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
Are there any questions? Mr. Speaker? No. Mr. Tiff?
You made a statement that there's something about core Nashville, like affordable housing not in the core or something like that. Can you explain what the core is then? Because I thought there was affordable housing in the core.
I think about the urban core, the ability to build new affordable housing in the urban core has been a challenge because of cost constraints. Inside of the interstate. Yeah.
So it's not that we don't have affordable housing in the core, it's just hard to build in the core.
It's much harder to build affordable housing in the core of Nashville than it is in the suburbs, simply due to cost and land values.
So if it's inside the interstate, so there's some on the other side of the interstate from Titan Stadium that I think is affordable housing.
That's right.
So that's not considered the core then, even though it's affordable housing?
No, it is one of the few deals that has been able to get done. I would consider that. I'm not.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out what when you say core, that kind of shocks the system a little bit of what that looks like.
Yep.
And so then on the slide, you have how many units at 30%, 60%, 80%? Just for a bigger conversation, what levels are there for affordable housing? Obviously, there's some that's more than 80, so I'm just trying to figure out what's the range usually when you're talking about affordable housing?
For affordable housing, the tax credit program that is established is really aimed at 60% of area median income. Within the last several years, they allowed us to average to a 60, which allowed us to go down and up. So we have to average to 60% of area median income, which means if we take some of the units down to 30, we can take some of the units up to 80, and you average to a 60.
Okay, but just in general, in all those other states, when they talk about affordable housing, is it always 80% and below, or do they have levels above that?
If it is above 80%, it's usually going to be considered workforce housing and not affordable housing.
And so in those states, is that a local designation or is that the state directing that? Because the only reason I'm asking is 80%, it's not affordable in some parts of our state at 120% of income. So I'm just trying to figure out where, if you were looking at to try to make a bigger model to allow more affordable housing for varying incomes, right, in high cost areas, do other states allow that to happen, or is everybody within the 80% and below?
I think other states have statewide programs. The program that is creating this is a federal program for creating the low-income housing tax credits. That allows us to qualify to receive and be in compliance with those tax credits. If it's above that 80%, we're not going to receive tax credits on those units.
So in other states, then it's a statewide, not left to the locals, is what you're saying.
In other states, if they're above 80%, it is probably a state thing making that happen.
And can you just give me one state so I can go look up what that state's done that has that as an example?
Florida has two tax abatement programs. It's called Live Local Act that they just passed in the last 2 years.
Huh?
One offers 100% tax abatement if you're at 80% AMI or below. One offers, I think it's 75% 75% if you're at 120% or below. Texas's is at 80% AMI. North Carolina's is at 80% AMI.
Okay.
And it's just a state by state on what that is. But when you move to Ohio, it's 60% AMI. In Nashville, it's the averaging at 60% AMI from that perspective.
And I assume in those states it would run through like THDA equivalent.
Yes, sir. Well,
Is that
in
right?
Texas, no, sir. It's done by a local perspective. It's a statewide law that then is administered by a local housing finance agency or by the local housing authority. In Florida, it's all done by Florida Housing, which is the equivalent of THCA.
Okay. All right.
In North Carolina, it is there is no state legislative body or state appointed body that administers it. It was done through through case law, and it's a North Carolina legislative thing that was done through a Supreme Court decision through the North Carolina Supreme Court.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to understand the limitations of what's happening. So then my other question, I guess, for Metro is, do you all have how many units across Metro there are at 30% below, 60% to 30, 80% to 60, and how many units are at workforce and what those incomes is? Those units.
Let me ask if Matt knows that information.
You don't have to know it today. I just.
No?
Okay. So is there a way
off the
that
top of our head.
you can prepare a report for us that will show in Metro how many units are 30% below, 30 to 60, 60 to 80, and how many are at workforce level with whatever income levels those are? Because if we're looking at the affordable, it would be nice to kind of have an understanding of where we have a lot of housing or a limited housing or not enough, and I don't know enough. Great slide where you're all at in Metro, but I don't have that info.
Yes, sir. The city just produced, probably in the last 3 or 4 years, a housing study regarding those income levels. You're pulling information from 7 to 12 different federal and programs, so it's a little bit more convoluted over like 60 years of housing policy. But I think the city has at least, it's not up to date as of today, but has one that's more recent that we can probably prepare for you. Or send you.
Yeah, that's fine. And then if we had an occupancy rate as well with those units, because I think that would be important to understand if you're full or 80 or 70 or 60 or whatever that looks like. If you're building out affordable housing, it'd be nice to kind of have a better understanding of exactly what that looks like. And are there openings now, or are we maximizing what we want to do here as the authority? And when if we have sufficient 80% to 30% potentially, if the data shows that, maybe it doesn't, then maybe it's a decision to go to more workflow housing, right? If that's the thing, but I think you have to have all the data. So I don't know how long it would take you, but I do appreciate the opportunity. And if you could get with me later, I'd be happy to talk about the other states. I want to kind of learn more about that, about if there's something on the state level we could do to help.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And just for the record, that's Hunter Nelson with Elmington, who's been hopping up. Yes, and we will follow up with you on the data request.
Hey, good afternoon. I know your slide said 323 multi-family affordable units. How many units are being built total? So people that actually come back and view this, they'll know how many units are being built total.
At this property will be, it's the first of two parts of the total Fallon development that we're responsible for. So we're building 323. And then there's a requirement for, I believe it's 600 total units within Fallon's development agreement.
Okay. So one question I do have, rent control is preempted in Davidson County. So if people coming in, let's just say their rent is $1,500 a month. The AMI has been increasing dramatically these past 15 years. So with the AMI increasing, are their rents going to increase as well?
Every year, HUD comes out and sets rents based upon the area median income, and that's what we follow.
But I'm saying, are their rents going to increase if HUD says, hey, it needs to go to...
Yes.
I just want to put this on record so when people watch this video, they know what they're dealing with.
Right.
Because some people don't know that the state of Tennessee is preempted from rent control, And when you talk to people, they be like, man, my rent just raised $200. Why? So I want them, when they come back and watch this video, they understand it's not on you all, it's a federal thing.
That's right.
All right.
Any other questions from anybody?
A question that kind of piggybacks on what the speaker was asking about. I'd be curious, you said 31 pilot deals since 2016, since it was started, and you guys did about a third of them?
I think it's like 60 total. We picked just 31.
Okay.
For those. Yeah,
All right. I'd just be curious, since this was started, how many affordable units have been created in Davidson County?
That's a great question.
Because of pilot.
Oh, okay.
So we've,
All right.
Here.
Matt Loftus, I'm with Metro Planning, formerly at MDHA. So since 2016, I believe we're at about 57 or 58 total pilots that have been approved. Last year, we crossed the threshold of 10,000 units created since 2016 through the LIHTC pilot program, and we're now past 11,000. And so the majority of those, it's probably a 60-40 split between new construction and substantial like rehabilitation of units. And yeah, they all fall between the 30% to 80% AMI levels. And it's at minimum 15-year affordability periods.
What are you projecting, since you were in MDHA, you're very familiar with the RAD conversion, what are you projecting moving forward with the RAD conversion on those projects that are in the core? I think it's 450 acres that HUD gave to Metro.
In terms of MDHA's kind of redevelopment of their existing public housing inventory through new LIHTC deals, is that sort of the question?
Just in general, there was an announcement last week about they're going to push forward with a couple of the other projects. I know that Casey was kind of the original one that we did, Revision Casey, and it's still in process, but I think Sudicum, Napier, and a couple others have been announced through a consortium of 5 different developers that was in the paper.
Yeah. So I don't want to speak on behalf of MDHA since I'm no longer employed there. But the
all right, you can speak in
okay, I'll speak generally. So at Casey, the thought was at least a 1-for-1 replacement of the former public housing units.
That was required.
That was required. Plus an additional, basically tripling the density. So adding an additional third of the units would be sort of in that workforce category that we were discussing earlier. And then another third would be market rate. So if you had, say, 700 units, you'd build up to 2,100. You'd have the same number of deeply affordable units at 700 workforce units and an additional 700 market to create like a more vibrant mixed income environment that's, deconcentrating poverty, which is a broad goal, I think, nationally. Napier Sudicum, I think, will follow a similar model. These are all the progress and the speed in which this can happen does kind of unfortunately fall on, forces outside of, I think, local and state government, and that's the federal government's commitment to continue funding the low-income housing tax credit program. And so we've seen that this has been, I think it's a politically popular at the federal level. And the allocation of bonding authority to the states has increased over the years, which has allowed us to do a lot more of these deals. And so MDHA has specific set-asides through THDA for public housing authorities, so they get kind of more beneficial treatment when applying for tax credits. And I think there's actually a set-aside for East Bank Authority on this one as well. So this one is very likely to get funded, and I think it's going to be it's a good first addition, I think, to the neighborhood.
Any other questions? Oh, Mr. Titt.
Mine's pretty straightforward. Is the timeline question again. When is the pilot program going to be likely an action item for us to decide on?
Thank you. So once we receive the formal application from Elmington, it will be reviewed by East Bank staff and Metro staff. We anticipate, and the hope would be, I believe from Elmington's timeline, to come before you at the next board meeting, which is January 27th, with that information for a vote. That's contingent on the fact that we haven't received a formal application or any details yet, and so the negotiations on the terms of the pilot need to occur between the East Bank Development Authority and Metro Finance. And then, as I mentioned, it has to go to council for one reading as well. So it's an aggressive timeline, and it's sort of contingent on negotiations going smoothly and quickly. But the anticipation would be at your next board meeting, and we would provide materials prior to that for your review.
And this wouldn't be the first Elmington pilot-supported project in Nashville, is that right?
That's right.
Okay. I think it'd be helpful, I mean, often we, through no fault of anyone, don't have the materials all that far out. I'd love to see like the last one or two, ones that were passed and approved and are going now, just to dig in and understand it more. Can Ben or Anna, can y'all send us out the last project or two's pilot agreement?
Specifically for Elmington? Yes. Okay. Yes.
Ms. Hodge, any questions? All right. Any other questions from anybody else? Okay, thank you both very much. I believe that concludes our meeting, so we'll adjourn. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you January 27th.